The clock on the wall showed 2:47 p.m. when Rachel finally got her break. Her feet were killing her. She'd been running around the diner since 6 that morning, refilling coffee cups, taking orders, and cleaning tables. The lunch rush had been brutal, and she still had 4 more hours to go before her shift ended. She sat down in the corner booth, the one nobody liked because it was right next to the kitchen door. But Rachel didn't mind. It was quiet here, and she could count her tips without anyone bothering her. She emptied her apron pocket onto the table. Crumpled bills and loose change scattered across the worn surface, $1 bills, quarters, dimes, a few nickels. She smoothed out each bill carefully and stacked the coins. $8.47. That was it. That was everything she had until Friday, and today was only Tuesday. Rachel let out a long breath and rubbed her eyes. Her daughter Lily was waiting at home with the neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who watched her after school for free because she knew Rachel was struggling. 7 years old, and Lily never complained. Not when Rachel couldn't buy her the new shoes all the other kids had. Not when dinner was pasta for the 4th night in a row. That little girl had more strength than most adults Rachel knew. She looked at the coins again and did the math in her head. The convenience store next door sold sandwiches for $3 each. If she bought 2, she'd have enough for dinner tonight. Lily could have one, and Rachel would split the other one between them. Maybe add some crackers from the pantry to make it feel like more. Rachel stood up and stretched. Her back ached. Her manager, Tom, always said she worked too hard, but what choice did she have? Single mother, no college degree, and rent due in 12 days. She picked up the money and headed toward the door. That's when she saw him. An old man stood outside the window, staring at the menu posted on the glass. Rain was pouring down and he was completely soaked. His gray hair was plastered to his head, and water dripped from his jacket onto the sidewalk. But it wasn't just the rain that caught Rachel's attention. It was his face. He wasn't just looking at the menu. He was studying it the way someone looks at something they desperately want, but know they can't have. His hand reached up and touched the glass gently, right over the picture of the burger special. Then he dropped his hand and turned away. Rachel felt something twist in her chest. She knew that look. She'd worn it herself plenty of times, standing outside bakeries, staring at birthday cakes she couldn't afford for Lily, walking past shoe stores, knowing her daughter's sneakers had holes in them, but there was nothing she could do about it. She pushed open the door and stepped out into the rain. "Excuse me, sir?" The old man turned around. Up close, she could see how thin he was. His clothes were old and faded, held together in places with safety pins. His shoes were practically falling apart, with duct tape wrapped around one of them to keep the sole attached. But it was his eyes that really got to her. They were tired, the kind of tired that comes from more than just one bad night. "Are you hungry?" Rachel asked. The man's face flushed red. He looked down at his feet. "I'm sorry, miss. I was just looking. I'll move along." "Wait," Rachel said quickly. "Please, come inside. Let me buy you lunch." He looked up at her, surprise written all over his face. I don't have any money to pay you back." "I'm not asking you to pay me back," Rachel said. She smiled, even though her mind was already recalculating her budget for the week. "Come on. You're soaking wet, and nobody should be standing out in the rain." The old man hesitated, then nodded slowly. Rachel led him back into the diner and sat him down at her corner booth. She waved at Tom behind the counter. "1 daily special, please." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Your break's almost over, Rachel. I know. This isn't for me. It's for him." She watched Tom's expression change as he looked at the old man, then back at her. He nodded and went to place the order. Rachel sat down across from the stranger. "What's your name?" she asked. "Harold," he said quietly. "Harold Whitman. I'm Rachel." "Nice to meet you, Harold." The food came quickly. Meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans. The same meal Rachel served probably 50 times a day, but could rarely afford to eat herself. She watched Harold pick up his fork with shaking hands. He ate slowly, like he was trying to make it last. Like he couldn't remember the last time he'd had a real meal. Rachel didn't ask him questions. She didn't need his story. She could see it in every careful bite he took. When he finished, Harold set down his fork and looked at her. His eyes were wet, but not from the rain this time. "God bless you, young lady," he whispered. "You have no idea what this means." Rachel felt her own throat get tight. "It's just lunch." "No," Harold said, shaking his head. "It's not just lunch. You saw me. Most people, they look right through folks like me, like we're invisible. But you saw me." Rachel didn't know what to say to that. She just smiled and squeezed his hand before standing up. Her break was over, and she had tables waiting. She paid Tom at the register. $7.50. That left her with 97 cents in her pocket. As she tied her apron back on and grabbed her order pad, she thought about the sandwiches she wouldn't be buying. She'd figure something out. She always did. Maybe Mrs. Patterson had some extra soup. Maybe she could make pancakes for dinner instead. Lily loved pancakes. Rachel glanced back at Harold as he stood to leave. He gave her a small wave, and she waved back. Then he disappeared into the rain, and Rachel went back to work. She never expected to see him again. She definitely never expected what would happen next. But that's the thing about kindness. You never know where it's going to lead. You never know whose life you're changing. And you certainly never know when that same kindness might come back to change your own life in ways you never imagined. For now, though, Rachel just had tables to serve and bills to pay. Just another Tuesday at the diner. Just another day of trying to make it work. Or so she thought. 3 weeks passed after that rainy Tuesday. Rachel had nearly forgotten about Harold, the old man she'd bought lunch for. Life had a way of pushing memories aside when you were constantly worried about the present. And right now, Rachel had plenty to worry about. She was standing in her tiny apartment, staring at a piece of paper that had been slipped under her door, an eviction notice. The words were formal and cold, but the message was clear. Her landlord was selling the building. She had 30 days to find a new place and move out. 30 days. Rachel's hands trembled as she read it again, hoping somehow the words would change. They didn't. She sank down onto the old couch and put her head in her hands. Lily was at school, which meant she had a few hours before she had to pull herself together and pretend everything was fine. But everything was not fine. She'd lived in this apartment for 4 years. It wasn't much. The heating barely worked in winter and the bathroom sink dripped constantly. But it was home. It was safe. And most importantly, the rent was something she could almost afford if she worked enough hours. Finding a new place, that was a different story entirely. Rachel spent that entire evening on her phone searching for apartments. Everything in her price range was either too far from Lily's school or in neighborhoods that made her nervous. And even those places had waiting lists. She filled out application after application, each one asking for references, credit checks, and proof of income. Single mother, waitress income, spotty credit from medical bills she still couldn't pay off. Rachel knew how landlords saw applications like hers. She'd been rejected before. But back then she at least had somewhere to live while she searched. This time was different. The next day at work, Rachel couldn't focus. She mixed up orders twice and forgot to refill coffee for table 6. Tom noticed. "You okay?" he asked during a quiet moment. Rachel wanted to tell him everything. But what good would it do? Tom was a good boss, but he couldn't solve this problem. Nobody could. "Just tired," she said. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel did everything she could think of. She asked Tom about getting her paycheck early. He gave her a small advance, but it wasn't nearly enough for first month's rent and a security deposit. She sold her TV online for $40. She listed her few pieces of jewelry on a resale app. She even considered selling her car, but then realized she needed it to get to work. She called every apartment complex within 30 miles. Most never called back. The ones that did told her politely that they'd gone with other applicants. Rachel knew what that meant. Other applicants with better credit. Other applicants without kids. Other applicants who had their lives together. Her sister called from 3 states away. "I wish I could help," she said. "But Amy, I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment. I barely have room for myself." Rachel understood. She told her sister not to worry. But after she hung up, she sat in her car outside the diner and cried for 20 minutes before going in for her shift. Lily started asking questions. "Mom, why are you putting our things in boxes?" "Just organizing, sweetie. Are we moving?" "Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" Lily shrugged. "As long as we're together." That nearly broke Rachel right there. 7 years old, and already so accepting of life's difficulties. No child should have to be that understanding. With 10 days left, Rachel visited the community assistance office. The waiting room was packed with people who looked just as desperate as she felt. After 3 hours, she finally met with a caseworker who listened sympathetically but offered little hope. "The emergency housing fund is depleted," the woman explained, "and the shelter system is at capacity. I can put you on a waiting list, but it might be months." "Months," Rachel repeated. "I have 10 days." The caseworker looked genuinely sorry. "I know, I'm so sorry. The best I can do is give you this list of resources. Some churches offer temporary assistance, and there are some programs that might help with moving costs, but the applications take time to process." Rachel took the papers and left. She sat in her car and looked at the list. More phone numbers to call, more applications to fill out, more waiting. She thought about her parents. They'd both passed years ago. First her mom, then her dad. Sometimes she missed them so much it physically hurt. Her dad would have known what to do. He always did. But he wasn't here, and Rachel was on her own. That night, she lay awake long after Lily fell asleep. She thought about worst-case scenarios. Living in her car, sending Lily to stay with her sister while Rachel figured things out. Asking Mrs. Patterson if they could stay on her couch for a few weeks. Each option felt like failure, like she'd let her daughter down. Rachel worked double shifts that weekend. Her feet ached so badly she could barely stand, but she couldn't afford to turn down the hours. Every dollar mattered now. Every single cent. On her way home Sunday night, she drove past the diner. The lights were still on even though they were closed. She could see Tom inside, doing paperwork. For a moment, Rachel thought about that Tuesday 3 weeks ago. She remembered Harold standing in the rain, remembered using her last few dollars to buy him lunch. Part of her wondered if that had been foolish. If she'd kept that money, she'd have $7.50 more right now. It wouldn't solve her problems, but still. Every dollar counted, but then she thought about Harold's face. The way he'd looked at her when he said she'd seen him. The way his hands had shaken as he ate. And she knew she couldn't regret it. Some things were more important than money. Even when you didn't have any money to spare. Still, regret or no regret, it didn't change her situation. She had 8 days left, no apartment lined up, and no idea what she was going to do. Rachel pulled into her parking spot and turned off the car. She sat there in the darkness for a long time, too tired to move, too overwhelmed to think. She'd worked so hard to build a stable life for Lily. She'd done everything right. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. The eviction notice was posted on everyone's door in the building. Rachel saw her neighbors carrying boxes to moving trucks. Some of them had found new places. Others were moving in with family. But Rachel kept seeing the same question in their eyes when they looked at her. "Where are you going?" She wished she had an answer. Mrs. Patterson asked her about it when she picked up Lily from her apartment. "Any luck with the housing search, dear?" "Still looking," Rachel said, forcing a smile. Mrs. Patterson studied her face. "You know, if you need a place to stay for a little while, you and Lily could use my spare room. It's small, but—" "Thank you," Rachel interrupted quickly. "That's incredibly kind, but we'll figure something out." She didn't want to burden Mrs. Patterson. The woman was already doing so much, watching Lily for free. Rachel couldn't ask for more. With 7 days left, then 6, then 5, Rachel's hope began to fade. She kept working, kept searching, kept trying. But the walls were closing in, and she was running out of time, running out of options, running out of strength. On Thursday morning, she woke up feeling numb. 4 days left. 4 days until she had to be out of her apartment and she had nowhere to go. Rachel got dressed for work mechanically. She braided Lily's hair and made her breakfast. She walked her to school and kissed her goodbye. Then she drove to the diner, parked her car and sat there for 10 minutes before going inside. She'd been invisible her whole life just like Harold, working hard, doing her best and still barely getting by. Nobody noticed people like them. Nobody cared. But Rachel couldn't afford to think like that. She had a daughter who depended on her. So she took a deep breath, wiped her eyes, and went inside to start her shift. She had no idea that everything was about to change. Thursday morning started like any other terrible day. Rachel tied her apron and grabbed her order pad, trying to focus on work instead of the countdown in her head. 4 days. She had 4 days left. She was refilling the coffee station when Tom approached her. He had a strange look on his face. Not angry, not worried. Something else. Something Rachel couldn't quite read. "Rachel, there's someone here asking for you." Her stomach dropped. Had the landlord sent someone? Was this about the eviction? "Who is it?" "I don't know. Some businessman. He's sitting in booth 7. Rachel's hands started sweating. Businessmen didn't come looking for waitresses unless something was wrong. Maybe she'd accidentally overcharged someone's credit card. Maybe someone had complained about her service. She walked slowly toward booth 7, her heart pounding. A man in an expensive suit sat there, a leather briefcase beside him. He was maybe 55, with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood up when he saw her approaching. "Ms. Rachel Torres?" he asked. "Yes?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "My name is David Chen. I'm an attorney." He reached out to shake her hand. "Could you sit down for a moment? I promise you're not in any trouble." Rachel sat down carefully, her mind racing through possibilities. Attorney? Why would an attorney want to talk to her? Mr. Chen opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "I'm here on behalf of my client, Harold Whitman. I believe you met him about 3 weeks ago?" Rachel's breath caught. Harold, the old man in the rain. "Is he okay?" Mr. Chen's expression softened. "I'm afraid Mr. Whitman passed away last week. He died peacefully in his sleep at a hospice center." "Oh." Rachel felt tears spring to her eyes. She'd only met Harold once, but somehow the news hit her hard. "I'm so sorry to hear that." "He spoke about you in his final days," Mr. Chen said gently. "He told me about what you did for him. How you bought him lunch when you clearly had very little yourself. How you treated him with dignity when most people wouldn't even look at him." Rachel wiped her eyes. It was just lunch, he was hungry. It was more than that to him. Mr. Chen opened the folder and pulled out some papers. "Ms. Torres, did Harold tell you anything about himself that day?" "No. We barely talked. He ate, thanked me, and left." Mr. Chen nodded. "Harold was a proud man. He wouldn't have told you his story, but I think you should hear it now." Rachel listened as Mr. Chen explained. Harold had once been a successful contractor. He'd owned a small apartment building, just 4 units that he'd bought as an investment property years ago. He and his wife had lived in one unit and rented out the others. Then his wife got sick. Cancer. The treatments were expensive, and even with insurance, the medical bills destroyed them financially. Harold sold everything he could to pay for her care. But it wasn't enough. She died anyway, and Harold was left with nothing but debt and grief. He fell into depression, stopped working, couldn't keep up with his own bills. Eventually, he lost everything except that one apartment building. He couldn't bring himself to sell it. It was the last thing he owned, the last connection to his old life. But he couldn't maintain it either. He started living on the streets, too proud to ask for help, too broken to help himself. "That day you found him," Mr. Chen continued, "was the first time in 2 weeks anyone had spoken to him like he was a person. The first time someone had shown him kindness." Rachel's throat felt tight. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. That's what made it matter." Mr. Chen slid the folder across the table to her. "A week after you helped him, some social workers found Harold and got him into a shelter. From there, he was placed in hospice care when they discovered he had late-stage heart disease. He only lived another 2 weeks. I'm glad he wasn't alone at the end," Rachel said quietly. "He wasn't, and in those final days he made some decisions. He contacted me about his will." Mr. Chen tapped the folder. Harold Whitman had no children and no living family. He had one asset left in this world, that apartment building. Rachel looked at the papers but didn't understand what she was seeing. "Ms. Torres, Harold left the building to you." The words didn't make sense at first. Rachel stared at Mr. Chen, waiting for him to laugh or tell her this was a mistake. "What?" "The apartment building, all 4 units. He left it to you in his will. The property is yours, But I don't. I can't. Rachel couldn't finish a sentence. Her brain refused to process what she was hearing. Mr. Chen smiled patiently. I know this is a shock. Let me explain. The building is paid off. No mortgage. 3 of the 4 units are currently rented. The tenants are on month-to-month leases and they've been paying rent to the property management company that was handling things for Harold. The 4th unit, the one Harold used to live in, has been empty since he left. Rachel's hands were shaking. Why would he do this? He left a letter. Would you like me to read it? Rachel nodded, unable to speak. Mr. Chen pulled out a handwritten note. His voice was gentle as he read. To the kind woman who fed me, I don't know if you'll ever understand what you gave me that day. It wasn't just food. It was proof that I still existed, that I still mattered. You had almost nothing, but you gave anyway. That's the kind of person who deserves a home. I don't have much left to give, but what I have is yours. Maybe it can help you the way you helped me. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for reminding me that there's still good in this world. God bless you, Harold. Rachel was crying now, tears streaming down her face. People in the diner were starting to stare, but she didn't care. This can't be real, she whispered. It's very real. All the paperwork is in order. The building is yours, free and clear. Mr. Chen pulled out more documents. The rental income from the 3 occupied units should cover property taxes, insurance, and basic maintenance, with some left over. The 4th unit needs some work, but it's fully furnished and habitable. You and your daughter could move in immediately if you wanted to. Rachel thought about the eviction notice, about the 4 days she had left, about Lily and the boxes half-packed in their apartment, about all the nights she'd stayed awake worrying about where they would go. I have to move out of my apartment in 4 days, she said. Then the timing is perfect, Mr. Chen said. I have the keys right here. Would you like to see the property? Rachel called Tom over and asked if she could leave for a few hours. He took one look at her tear-stained face and told her to take the whole day. Mr. Chen drove her to the building. It was in a decent neighborhood, about 20 minutes from the diner. The building was older but well-maintained. Red brick with white trim, a small garden out front that needed some weeding. Mr. Chen unlocked the door to Unit 4. Inside, the apartment was bigger than any place Rachel had ever lived. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen with a window, hardwood floors. Yes, the walls needed paint. Yes, the furniture was outdated. But it was clean and solid and safe. Rachel walked through the rooms in a daze. She looked out the window of the 2nd bedroom and imagined Lily's bed there. Her toys, her books, a real space for her daughter to grow up in. There's more, Mr. Chen said. He showed her the lease agreements for the other units, showed her the bank statements from the property management company, explained how everything worked. The 3 tenants paid a combined amount that would cover all the expenses and leave Rachel with a small cushion each month. Not enough to quit her job, but enough to breathe, enough to save, enough to stop drowning. I don't know what to say, Rachel said. You don't have to say anything. Just accept it. This is yours now. You earned it. But I didn't do anything to earn this. You showed kindness to a stranger when you had every reason not to. In my experience, Ms. Torres, that's worth more than most people ever give in their entire lives. They went back to the diner so Rachel could finish her shift, but she couldn't focus on anything. Her mind kept spinning. An apartment, a home, security, a future. That night, she told Lily while they ate dinner at their small kitchen table, Sweetie, I have something to tell you. We found a new place to live. Lily looked up from her pasta. Really, where? It's a nice apartment with 2 bedrooms. You'll have your own room, and we can stay there as long as we want. Forever if we want to. Forever? Forever. Lily smiled, and Rachel realized her daughter had been more worried than she'd let on. Kids knew. They always knew when something was wrong. Over the next few days, Rachel and Mrs. Patterson packed up the apartment. Mr. Chen helped arrange movers. The property management company did a final walkthrough of Unit 4 and made sure everything was ready. On moving day, Rachel stood in her old apartment one last time. She thought about all the years she'd struggled here, all the times she'd counted pennies and worried about the future, all the nights she'd felt invisible and forgotten, and she thought about Harold standing in the rain looking at a menu he couldn't afford. 2 invisible people who'd seen each other when no one else would. Rachel locked the door behind her and drove to her new home. her home. The words still didn't feel real. But when she walked through the door with Lily and saw her daughter's face light up at all the space, it started to feel real, very real. And for the first time in years, Rachel felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. The first night in the new apartment felt surreal. Rachel walked from room to room after Lily fell asleep, touching the walls like she needed to confirm they were solid, real, actually hers. She ended up in the living room, sitting on Harold's old couch, looking at the boxes they still needed to unpack. On the coffee table sat the folder Mr. Chen had given her. Inside were all the documents proving this wasn't a dream. Property deed, lease agreements, bank statements. Rachel picked up Harold's letter and read it again. His handwriting was shaky but careful, like each word took effort. She thought about him writing this in a hospice bed, sick and dying, but thinking about her. A waitress he'd met once. A stranger who'd bought him lunch. It didn't make sense, except somehow it did. The next morning, Rachel woke up confused about where she was. Then she remembered. She had a home. A real home. She got up and made breakfast in her new kitchen, the morning light streaming through windows that actually looked out onto trees instead of a parking lot. Lily came out of her bedroom, rubbing her eyes. "Mom, is this really ours?" "It really is, baby. Forever? Forever." Lily smiled and climbed into her chair at the table. They ate pancakes together, and for the first time in weeks, Rachel didn't have that tight knot of anxiety in her stomach. The constant fear that had been her companion for so long was gone. Or at least quieter. She still went to work that day. Tom looked surprised to see her. "I thought you might take some time off," he said. "I can't afford to," Rachel said. Then she paused. "Actually, I probably could now. But I don't want to. I like working here." It was true. The diner had been her constant through everything. The regulars knew her name. Tom had been patient with her when she needed time off for Lily's school events. This place had been stable when nothing else was. "Well, we're glad to have you," Tom said. "And Rachel? I don't know what happened yesterday, but you seemed different, lighter." She was lighter, like she'd been carrying a 100-pound weight and someone had finally lifted it off her shoulders. Over the next few weeks, Rachel settled into her new life. She met her tenants. They were good people, a young couple in Unit 1 who were saving to buy their first house, a retired teacher in Unit 2 who'd lived there for 12 years, a college student in Unit 3 who was quiet and always paid rent on time. They all said the same thing when they met her. They'd been worried when they heard Harold was gone. Worried about what would happen to the building, whether they'd have to move. Rachel assured them nothing would change. They could stay as long as they wanted. The property management company taught her the basics. How to handle maintenance requests. Who to call when something broke. How to keep records. It was overwhelming at first, but Rachel had been managing tight budgets and solving problems her whole life. This was just a different kind of challenge. She used some of her first rental income to paint Lily's room. They went to the hardware store together and Lily picked out a light purple color. They spent a Saturday afternoon painting, getting more paint on themselves than the walls, laughing the whole time. Rachel couldn't remember the last time she'd heard her daughter laugh like that. She also used some money to fix up the garden out front. She didn't know much about plants, but the retired teacher in Unit 2, Mrs. Rodriguez, offered to help. They spent afternoons pulling weeds and planting flowers. Mrs. Rodriguez told stories about her students, and Rachel told her about the diner. "You're good people," Mrs. Rodriguez said one day. "Harold would be proud." Rachel thought about that a lot. She'd never know if it was true, but she hoped it was. She found a picture of Harold in one of the closets. It must have been from 20 years ago. He was younger, smiling, standing next to a woman who must have been his wife. They were in front of the building, looking happy, looking hopeful about their future. Rachel had the picture framed and hung it in the hallway. She wanted to remember, not just Harold, but what he'd taught her. That kindness mattered, that seeing people mattered, that sometimes the smallest acts created the biggest changes. One evening, about 2 months after moving in, Rachel was walking home from work when she saw a young woman sitting on the bus stop bench. The woman was crying, her hands covering her face. Something about the scene felt familiar. Rachel almost kept walking. She was tired and she had groceries to carry home. But something made her stop. "Excuse me, are you okay?" The woman looked up. She couldn't have been more than 25. I'm fine, sorry. You don't look fine. Rachel sat down next to her. I'm Rachel. I live right there. She pointed at the apartment building. I'm Beth, the woman said, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, I'm just having a bad day. Want to talk about it? Beth hesitated, then it all came out. She'd lost her job 2 weeks ago. She was living with her boyfriend. But the relationship was falling apart. She'd been at a job interview today and thought it went well, but they just called to say they hired someone else. She had $50 to her name and no idea what she was going to do. Rachel listened to the whole story. Then she pulled a $20 bill out of her wallet. Here, for groceries or whatever you need. Beth stared at the money.
I can't take that. Yes, you can.
I've been where you are. I know what it's like. But you don't even know me. I don't need to. Rachel pressed the money into Beth's hand. Things will get better. I promise they will. And when they do, help someone else. That's all I ask. Beth started crying again, but different tears this time. Thank you. Thank you so much. Rachel gave her a hug and went home. $20 wasn't much, but it might buy Beth a few more days of hope. And sometimes that's all people needed. Just enough hope to keep going. Lily was doing better too. She'd made new friends at school. She had her own space to do homework. She seemed more confident, more settled. One night she asked Rachel a question. Mom, why did that man give us this house? Rachel thought about how to explain it. Because I did something nice for him once, and he wanted to pay it forward. What did you do? I bought him lunch when he was hungry. Lily was quiet for a moment. Just lunch? Just lunch. But sometimes small things can mean a lot to people. Like when you packed an extra sandwich in my lunch and I gave it to my friend who forgot hers? Rachel smiled. Exactly like that. She realized she'd been teaching Lily about kindness without even trying. By example. By living it. That felt more important than any lecture she could give. Rachel started keeping extra money in her pocket when she went to work. Not much, just some singles and change. When she saw someone who looked like they needed help, she'd slip them a few dollars. Buy someone a coffee. Leave a bigger tip than usual for the dishwasher who worked the back shift. She wasn't rich. The rental income wasn't making her wealthy. She still worked full-time, still worried about money sometimes, but she had enough. Enough to live on, enough to save, and enough to share. And that felt like more than she'd ever had before. One Saturday, Rachel decided to clean out Harold's closet. Most of his clothes had already been donated, but there were some boxes on the top shelf she hadn't gone through yet. She pulled them down and opened them carefully. Inside were old photos. Harold and his wife through the years. Their wedding, vacations, birthdays, a whole life lived together. Rachel felt like she was intruding, looking at these private moments. But she also felt like she understood Harold better now. He'd had love. He'd had happiness. And then he'd lost it all. The grief must have been unbearable. No wonder he'd given up. No wonder he'd ended up on the streets. In the bottom of the box was a small notebook. Rachel opened it and saw entries written in Harold's handwriting. A journal of some kind. She started to close it, feeling like she shouldn't read it. But the last entry caught her eye. It was dated the day after Rachel had bought him lunch. Today a young woman bought me a meal. She didn't have to. I could see she didn't have much herself. But she saw me standing in the rain and she helped me anyway. I don't know her name. I didn't think to ask. But she reminded me of Linda. My Linda always said the world needed more people who stopped to help, who noticed the ones everyone else ignored. This woman didn't see a homeless man. She saw a person. I've felt invisible for so long. But today someone saw me. I'm grateful for that. More grateful than she'll ever know. Rachel sat on the floor surrounded by boxes and cried. She cried for Harold, for his wife Linda, for all the pain they'd endured, but also because she finally understood. She hadn't just bought a man lunch. She'd given him something he'd lost. She'd reminded him he was human, that he mattered, and in return he'd given her everything. Rachel carefully packed the journal away with the photos. She'd keep them. Harold didn't have family to remember him, so she would. Her and Lily. They'd remember the man who'd changed their lives with his last act of kindness. That night, Rachel tucked Lily into bed and sat on the edge of her mattress like she did every night. I love you, baby girl. I love you too, Mom. Lily yawned. Are you happy now? It was such a simple question, but it hit Rachel hard. When was the last time anyone had asked her that? When was the last time she'd even thought about whether she was happy? Yeah, Rachel said softly. Yeah, I think I am. And she realized it was true. 6 months had passed since Rachel received the keys to her new life. Standing in the kitchen on a Saturday morning, making pancakes while Lily sat at the table drawing, Rachel caught herself smiling for no particular reason. Just because she was happy. Just because this was her life now. The apartment had become a real home. They'd added curtains to the windows. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator. The furniture was still Harold's, but they'd made it theirs with throw pillows and blankets. Little touches that said a family lived here. Rachel still worked at the diner 5 days a week. She'd cut back from 6, giving herself Mondays off to handle building maintenance and spend time with Lily. Tom had been understanding, even supportive. He'd told her more than once how proud he was of her. The building was running smoothly. The tenants were happy. Mrs. Rodriguez had turned the front garden into something beautiful, with flowers blooming in colors Rachel didn't even know existed. The college student had graduated and moved out, but Rachel had found a new tenant quickly. A single dad with a 10-year-old son who reminded Rachel of herself a year ago, struggling but trying. She gave him a break on the deposit. But more than the practical changes, something had shifted inside Rachel. She looked at the world differently now. She noticed people more, really noticed them. Like the teenage boy who bagged groceries at the supermarket. Rachel saw how tired he looked, how his shoes were worn down. So she always made sure to tell him he was doing a great job. Small words, but his face lit up every time. Maybe nobody else bothered to see him. Rachel did. Or the elderly man who came into the diner every Wednesday for lunch. He always sat alone, reading the newspaper slowly like he had nowhere else to be. Rachel learned his name was Mr. Patterson. She started sitting with him for a few minutes on her break, just talking. About the weather, about the news, about nothing important. But he told her once that Wednesday was his favorite day of the week now. Rachel understood something she'd never really grasped before. Kindness didn't require money or grand gestures. It just required seeing people, acknowledging their existence, making them feel like they mattered. She'd been invisible for so long herself that she recognized it in others instantly. The woman in the checkout line counting pennies with embarrassment. The construction worker eating lunch alone on the sidewalk. The mom with crying kids and exhausted eyes. Rachel saw them all now, and when she could, she helped. A few dollars here. A kind word there. Sometimes just a smile and a nod that said, I see you. You're not alone. Lily was learning too, without Rachel having to teach her directly. She saw her mom's example and followed it. She befriended the lonely kid at school. She shared her lunch with anyone who needed it. She held the door open for people and said please and thank you, like they were the most important words in the language. One evening, Lily came home from school with a story. Mom, there was this new girl in class today.
She didn't have any friends yet?
Everyone else was playing together, but she was just sitting by herself. What did you do? Rachel asked, though she already knew. I asked if she wanted to play with me. Her name is Amy. She's really nice. Can she come over sometime? Rachel pulled her daughter into a hug. Of course she can. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. I just didn't want her to feel alone, Lily said simply. Being alone is sad. Rachel thought about Harold again. About how alone he must have felt. About how one moment of not being alone had meant everything to him. She'd kept his picture hanging in the hallway. Sometimes she'd stop and look at it, at his younger self smiling next to his wife. She'd thank him quietly. Not out loud, but in her head. Thank you for seeing something in me worth helping. Thank you for changing our lives. Rachel had also started volunteering at a community center on her days off, just a few hours a month, helping serve meals to people experiencing homelessness. She couldn't solve everyone's problems. She couldn't save everyone. But she could ladle soup into bowls and look people in the eye and treat them with dignity. The first time she volunteered, she saw so many people who reminded her of Harold. Different faces, different stories, but the same look in their eyes. That mixture of hunger and hope and shame and exhaustion. She knew that look. She'd seen it in her own mirror often enough. One man reminded her especially of Harold. He was older, with gray hair and shaking hands. He thanked her quietly for the food, and something in his voice made Rachel's chest tight. After the meal service ended, she found him sitting outside. Excuse me, she said. I'm Rachel. He looked up, surprised that someone was talking to him. "George. Nice to meet you, George." She sat down next to him.
Can I ask you something?
"Do you have a place to stay tonight?" George shook his head. "Shelter's full." "I'll find somewhere," Rachel thought for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call to a friend she'd made through the volunteer program. Someone who ran a small shelter on the other side of town. She explained the situation. 20 minutes later, George had a bed for the night and information about services that could help him. He looked at Rachel with tears in his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because someone did it for me once," Rachel said. "In a different way, but they did. And now I'm paying it forward." On the walk back to her car, Rachel thought about the chain of kindness. Harold had helped her. She was helping George. Maybe George would help someone else someday. Maybe that person would help another. And on, ripples spreading outward from one act of generosity. That's how the world got better. Not through huge dramatic gestures, but through small daily acts of seeing each other, of caring, of choosing kindness even when it cost something. Rachel still had hard days. Being a landlord came with challenges. A pipe burst in Unit 2 and cost money to fix. The young couple in Unit 1 decided to move out, and finding new tenants took longer than expected. Lily got sick and needed to miss school for a week. Work was stressful sometimes. Life was still life. But the difference was that Rachel could handle it now. She had a cushion, breathing room. When the pipe burst, she didn't panic about how she'd pay for it. When Lily got sick, she could take time off work without worrying about losing her apartment. The constant state of crisis that had defined her life for so long was gone. It was amazing how much easier it was to be kind to others when you weren't drowning yourself. She'd thought about that a lot lately. About how poverty made kindness harder. When you were barely surviving, it was hard to see beyond your own needs. Hard to have energy left over for anyone else. That didn't make people selfish. It made them human. But Rachel had somehow managed to be kind even when she had nothing. And that had saved her, not just practically with the apartment, but spiritually too. It had reminded her that she was still human, still capable of caring about someone other than herself. She thought Harold must have felt the same way when he wrote his will. He had nothing left except one building. He could have sold it and used the money for his medical care. But instead he chose kindness. He chose to help someone who'd helped him, and in doing so, he'd created something that would last longer than his own life. On the anniversary of the day Rachel had met Harold, she took flowers to the cemetery where he was buried. Mr. Chen had told her the location. It was a simple grave with a simple headstone. Harold Whitman. Beloved husband, 1947-2024. Rachel placed the flowers down and sat in the grass. She told Harold about Lily, about the building, about the people she was helping, about how his kindness had multiplied beyond what he could have imagined. "I hope you're with Linda now," she said quietly. "I hope you're happy, and I want you to know that you're not forgotten. You mattered. Your life mattered, and what you did for me mattered more than I can ever explain." A breeze rustled through the trees. Rachel sat there for a long time, feeling peaceful, feeling grateful, feeling connected to this man she'd barely known but who had changed everything. When she got home, Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table. Rachel made them dinner and they ate together, talking about their days. Lily told her about school. Rachel told her about visiting Harold's grave. "Do you think he knows?" Lily asked. "That we're okay?" "I hope so," Rachel said. "I really hope so." That night after Lily went to bed, Rachel sat at the kitchen table with Harold's journal. She'd read it several times now. His entries about losing his wife, about losing his home, about losing hope, but also about moments of small beauty, a sunrise, a bird singing, a kind word from a stranger. Rachel pulled out a notebook of her own and started writing. She'd never kept a journal before, but she wanted to start now. She wanted to remember this feeling. This moment in her life when everything had changed. She wrote about Harold, about that rainy Tuesday, about the $7.50 that had seemed like so much money at the time, about the eviction notice and the fear and the desperate searching for answers. And she wrote about what she'd learned. That kindness was never wasted. That seeing people mattered. That sometimes the smallest acts created the biggest changes. That we were all connected in ways we couldn't always see. She wrote about her promise to herself. To never forget what it felt like to be invisible, to always notice the people others ignored, to help when she could, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Because that's what Harold had taught her. Not just through his gift, but through his life. He'd had everything, lost it all, and still found a way to be generous at the end. If he could do that, Rachel could too. The next morning, Rachel went to work like always. She tied her apron, grabbed her order pad, and started her shift. But she moved through the diner differently now. She really looked at people. The regular who always ordered black coffee and toast. The young couple on their first date. The businessman eating alone. And when she saw someone who looked lost or lonely or struggling, she made a point to be extra kind. An extra warm smile. A genuine, "How are you doing today?" An extra few minutes to chat. Small things. But small things mattered. At lunch, a woman came in who Rachel hadn't seen before. She looked nervous, checking her purse several times, clearly counting money in her head. Rachel recognized that behavior. She'd done it herself 1,000 times. When the woman ordered just a side salad and water, Rachel made a decision. She went to the kitchen and came back with the full lunch special. "Soup, sandwich, and chips. I didn't order this," the woman said. "I know," Rachel said with a smile. "But you look like you could use a good meal." "It's on me." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I can't pay for this. I'm not asking you to. Please enjoy your lunch." Rachel walked away before the woman could protest. She didn't need thanks. She didn't need to know the woman's story. She just needed to help, because that's what Harold would have done. That's what kindness looked like. After her shift, Rachel walked home through the neighborhood. She passed the diner window where she'd first seen Harold standing in the rain. She stopped and looked at her reflection in the glass. She wasn't the same person who'd walked out that door 3 weeks ago. That Rachel had been drowning, barely surviving, wondering if she'd ever get ahead. This Rachel had a home, had hope, had a future. Not because she'd won the lottery or gotten lucky, but because she'd chosen kindness when it would have been easier not to. Because she'd seen another human being and decided they mattered. And somehow, that simple act had come back to save her. Rachel smiled at her reflection and continued walking home. Home. The word still felt magical. She walked up the steps to the building, past the garden that Mrs. Rodriguez maintained, and unlocked the door to Unit 4. Inside, Lily was playing with blocks on the living room floor. She looked up and grinned when Rachel walked in. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, baby girl." Rachel hung up her purse and looked around at their home. At the pictures on the walls. At Lily's drawings on the fridge. At Harold's photo in the hallway watching over them. She thought about how one meal had changed 2 lives. How one moment of kindness had created ripples that were still spreading. How being seen had saved Harold's soul, and his gratitude had saved Rachel's future. And she understood the most important lesson of all. We're not meant to survive this world alone. We're meant to help each other, to see each other, to lift each other up when we fall. That's what being human means. Rachel had been given an incredible gift. Not just an apartment building, but a reminder that kindness matters. That small acts have power. That we all have the ability to change someone's life, even when we think we have nothing to give. And now it was her turn to pass that gift forward. To live in a way that honored Harold's memory. To teach Lily that the most important thing in life isn't money or success or status. It's how we treat each other. Especially the ones everyone else ignores because we're all invisible sometimes. We're all struggling sometimes. We're all standing in the rain looking at something we can't afford, hoping someone will see us, and sometimes, if we're very lucky, someone does.